I never imagined my dream car, a bright red Ferrari that I worked my whole life to buy, would end up trapped in my own driveway, buried under a heavy layer of wet mud on a stormy night. The rain poured down like the sky was tearing apart. Lightning flashed across the clouds, and there stood HOA Karen with her umbrella, smirking as if she had finally won some cruel game against me. She thought she was clever, turning the storm into her weapon, using truckloads of dirt to block me in like a prisoner. My neighbors peeked through their curtains, some whispering, some too scared to speak, while I stood in the rain staring at the mess. My blood boiled, but I stayed calm, because what Karen didn't know was that her little trick would backfire in ways she could never imagine. That night, karma was already racing toward her, faster than the rain itself. My name is Anthony, and when I first moved into this neighborhood, I believed it was going to be the perfect place to enjoy my new home and my Ferrari in peace. But that dream was shattered the moment HOA President Karen set her eyes on me. At first, her attacks seemed small and petty, like complaining that my car made too much noise when I started it in the morning, or mocking me that my driveway was too shiny, as if keeping things clean was a crime. I brushed it off, thinking she would get bored and move on, but I underestimated just how far she was willing to go. The stormy night changed everything, because that was when she crossed the line from petty harassment to full-blown destruction. She wanted to humiliate me in front of everyone, but what she didn't realize was that her cruel plan would soon trap her instead. The storm grew louder as thunder shook the sky and heavy rain hammered against my windows, pulling me out of sleep and forcing me to the front door where I froze at the sight before me. My beautiful Ferrari sunken halfway in thick brown mud that covered the entire driveway like a trap designed to swallow it whole. And standing at the edge of the mess with her umbrella tilted smugly was Karen, her eyes gleaming with the satisfaction of someone who thought they had finally broken me. My neighbors' curtains moved as shadows gathered behind them, some whispering, while others just stared, but none dared to step outside in the pouring rain. Karen raised her voice above the storm and called out that this was part of an HOA construction project and that my driveway had been out of compliance for months, accusing me of violating rules I had never even heard of. I clenched my fists, the anger burning through me, but instead of shouting, I bit my tongue and studied her, because behind the fake excuses and smug laughter, I could see the truth written all over her face. She had planned this moment, waiting for the heaviest rain to dump dirt and stone across my property, knowing the water would turn it into a swamp that would trap me completely. She wanted to humiliate me, to make me look helpless in front of everyone, and for a second I could almost feel her victory pressing against me like the weight of the storm. But I refused to give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. I kept my head high, even as the rain drenched me, and calmly asked her to explain why the supposed construction had only affected my house and no one else's. She ignored my question, pretending to check her phone as if she had no time for me. But I caught the smirk pulling at her lips, the smug curve that betrayed everything. My car groaned under the weight of mud pressing against the tires, water splashing against its polished sides, and in that moment, a cold determination rose inside me. She thought this was the end of my pride, but what she didn't realize was that I had already decided she was going to pay for every ounce of dirt that touched my home, and her downfall was going to arrive quicker than she ever imagined. I walked back inside soaked to the bone, but more focused than ever, every step echoing with a quiet promise that I would not let Karen's cruelty go unanswered. And as I entered my living room, I pulled up the feed from my security cameras, scrolling through the night until the truth unfolded right in front of me. The grainy image of two trucks pulling up to my house in the middle of the storm. Headlights dimmed, workers climbing out in raincoats and deliberately dumping piles of dirt across my driveway while Karen stood by with her umbrella directing them like some twisted commander. My heart pounded, but instead of rage, I felt an icy calm settle over me, because now I had exactly what I needed. I copied the footage to multiple drives, sent it to a secure folder, and then dialed the number for the city inspector's office, explaining the situation in detail and sending them the evidence. The man on the other end promised me an immediate response, and for the first time that night, a small smile tugged at my lips. But I didn't stop there, because I knew Karen's strength came from the silence of the people around her, the way she intimidated neighbors into compliance. So I decided to turn that silence into a storm of its own. I visited my closest neighbors. The following morning, still drenched driveway behind me as proof, and carefully showed them the video. Their eyes widened, not in surprise, but in recognition, because it wasn't the first time she had pulled a stunt like this. One man confessed she had fined him for leaving his trash bin out 10 minutes late. Another woman whispered that Karen had threatened her with legal action over flowers planted outside the approved color palette. They were all tired, frustrated, and scared. But as they watched Karen on video orchestrating her scheme against me, I saw their fear begin to shift into anger. Whispers turned into promises, and by the time I left, half the street was already talking about standing together against her. By the afternoon, the inspectors arrived, measuring, taking samples, photographing every inch of the mud, and when I played them the footage, their faces darkened with disbelief at how blatant the violation was. They told me dumping soil without permits was a serious offense, not just against me, but against city law, and that heavy fines were inevitable. Watching them write notes under the pouring rain, I felt a rush of satisfaction I hadn't tasted in years, but I kept my composure, nodding politely while inside I was already picturing Karen's face when the hammer came down. She thought she had buried me in mud, but she had no idea she had just dug her own pit. And soon enough she was going to fall straight into it without a way out. By the time evening rolled around, the storm had grown wilder, the rain falling harder than before, lightning cracking across the black sky. And I sat on my porch under the cover of my roof as the city inspector's words replayed in my mind, their notes, their stern faces, and their promise that the fines against the HOA would be severe, and that Karen would personally be held accountable since her signature was on the paperwork authorizing the so-called construction. I didn't need to lift a finger anymore. The law was already at work, and she had no escape. Still, fate decided to deal her a punishment even harsher than fines or angry neighbors. As I sipped my coffee, watching the sheets of rain pound against the street, I saw headlights approaching slowly, Karen's SUV struggling to make it through the flooding roads. She had parked further down earlier in the day, and now as she tried to drive up, her tires sank deep into the very mud she had ordered to be dumped on my driveway. The storm had thickened it into a swamp, wrapping around her wheels like chains, and no matter how hard she pressed the accelerator, the car refused to move. Her umbrella was nowhere to be seen this time, and she was forced to step out into the cold rain, her expensive heels sinking straight into the muck as water splashed up her legs. She slipped, cursed, and screamed, waving her arms desperately for help, but not a single neighbor came outside. They had seen enough, and their silence was louder than thunder. I leaned back in my chair, dry and calm, watching her struggle in the very trap she thought she had created for me. And I realized karma didn't just come back to bite her, it came back faster than the storm itself. The inspectors would return. Tomorrow, with official papers, the fines would crush her pride, and the neighbors she used to control would turn their backs on her. For now, though, her punishment was standing right in front of me, drenched, humiliated, and stranded in the storm, sinking deeper with every desperate step. I didn't need revenge anymore. Nature itself had already chosen sides, and it was crystal clear who had lost. As I closed my door and left her screams behind, one question burned in my mind, and maybe you can answer it for me. When someone abuses power to hurt others, do you think they deserve the slow hand of justice, or the swift strike of karma?